afternoon, everyone. My name is Carla Monteroso. Welcome to the closing panel of the Accelerating Justice, Spotlighting the Economic Future We Deserve Common Future Summit. As I said, my name is Carla Monteroso, and I'm honored to be your moderator for this important discussion titled Investing in Black Visions and Leaders. In recent years, we've witnessed a significant rise in anti tolerance movements, the alt right and white supremacists, aiming to undermine the power of marginalized leaders, which has in turn fueled a retraction in the funding for DEI initiatives and a push on our part to get that retraction to turn around. Part of the necessary healing that we need to do involves fostering interracial solidarity. As a Latina woman, I deeply understand the importance of standing together with the Black community to close the opportunity gap for all marginalized groups. I was so lucky to start the first part of my career learning and studying from Black leaders and Black educators. My commitment to this work stems from a shared struggle and a collective vision for equity and an unshakable belief that by centering Black women and femmes, that we will heal the conditions that all marginalized people are experiencing. Tonight, today we're joined by three remarkable women who embody this commitment and are tirelessly investing in Black leaders and their visions. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Faye Harwitt from Black Wall Street Forward, Maya Blankenship, co-CEO of Black Wildflowers Fund, and Leah Patterson from Remix Ideas. To start our discussion, I'd like for you to do a quick intro of who you are and what your organizations do. Faye, would you get us started?
Certainly. Thanks so much. Very grateful to be here with all of you today and beautiful company. Forward Cities is a nonprofit organization that helps communities grow more equitable entrepreneurial ecosystems. And for us in our Black Wall Street Forward work specifically, we recognize that business ownership has long been a crucial pathway for wealth creation in the Black community. And it's widely recognized that most traditional and inclusive approaches to entrepreneurial support and economic development are not designed for us and don't address and integrate the unique identity, values, and culture of Black Americans. And they rarely center our voices or our leadership or our vision. And so we believe that entrepreneurial pathways and support efforts rooted in that unique history, identity, and culture of our people hold unlimited potential for collective power and intergenerational wealth. So Black Wall Street Forward initiative is a national action learning network of equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem builders. And that is just folks that really have a heart and a passion and a desire to support Black entrepreneurs and catalyze economic liberation and opportunities for wealth creation. And we're doing that through reimagining and developing vibrant Black Wall Streets across the country through folks on the ground doing the work in real time.
Thank you, Faye. Leah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leah Patterson with Remix Ideas. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer. And Remix Ideas, we're really committed to changing and supporting an a just economic system for Black entrepreneurs in Arkansas and beyond. And we do that through challenging intergenerational poverty and creating businesses and pathways for economic mobility. And one of those pathways is our Imani Fund project. Our Imani Fund is a very unique funding vehicle, which does not, hopefully you guys can't hear all that in the background. Love it. But we are a unique funding vehicle that doesn't look at traditional requirements for funding, but actually looks at the strength of that business model. We have a very unique underwriting process for that. And really the intent is to remove barriers, traditional barriers and those economic red lines for entrepreneurs that have strong business models and just need that capital to see it through.
And last but certainly not least, one of the reasons this is very special for me is that one of the Black leaders that I learned under at a very nascent part of my career is the wonderful Maia. If you could go.
Thank you, Carla. My name's Maia Blankenship. Honored to be with you all this afternoon. And I am a co founder and co CEO of Black Wildflowers Fund. We are a national movement of Black educators who are transforming schools and creating learning environments where Black and Brown babies can thrive. And this year alone, we funded 5 new micro schools all across the country that are led by, designed by, founded by amazing Black educators who have been working in their communities for many years and decades. And so we exist ultimately to remove the barriers that oftentimes social entrepreneurs have to face. We also exist to really address the pay equity gap for Black educators. It's unacceptable that in our country, we pay early childhood educators $14 an hour on average. That is not a livable wage. And educators who are doing the most important work to ensure that our children love themselves, love learning, and grow up to be thriving citizens in our democracy deserve to be heard. They deserve to be trusted, and we must fund their vision because they're closest to the families and children that are affected by what happens when we don't. So I'm honored to be here and to get into the conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you, Maia. The Combahee River Collective once stated, if Black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free, since our freedom would necessitate the destruction of all the systems of oppression. When we overcome the DEI pushback, how do you see the ripples from your efforts when investing in Black leadership and advocating for systemic change? Leah?
This is a beautiful question. Really and truly, I think it's important to frame this question in a historic context. When you look at you look at this country, the system of this country doesn't work for Black people. And when you look at the Constitution and the fact that um, rights for Black people and women had to be written into the Constitution in order for those rights to even begin to be addressed and those inequities to even really begin to be addressed. That frames for you how important and how vital it is to address the inequities in these communities. And from addressing the inequities in these communities, this will then ripple onto every other community because you're addressing it at the most marginalized and the most oppressed in the community. And so and that's what we feel here at Remix Ideas is that addressing these issues at this grassroots, at um, this very pivotal space, will then ripple out because what's good for us will ultimately be good for everyone. What's great for an Arkansas economy for black people in Arkansas will absolutely be wonderful for the rest of the economy of Arkansas, and that ripples out nationwide.
Thank you. Maia?
Well, I think at Black Wildflowers Fund, we think about this in the form of reconstruction and what happened when Black people were free and what we built in community with one another. Women were at the center of rebuilding our communities. Freedom schools um, were a key part of so many Black folks being able to learn how to read. It literally was illegal for us to read in this country. And so a lot of times people talk about the micro school movement or innovative small schools, homeschooling, pods, all of that to me is just an extension of what has always been here. And so, how do we actually make that work for all children? And especially for Black educators who are doing that work? I think a lot of it starts with innovative funding, but it also starts with investing and trusting Black women. Black women have been at the center and the fringe of early childhood education for generations, right? The first careers that women were able to have in our country were as educators, right? So my grandmother founded the first Black public um, Montessori school in the state of Tennessee through Memphis City Schools. And so when she learned of and got exposed to the Montessori method, she saw it as a liberatory one that all Black children in her city should have access to. I also benefited from a Montessori education because my grandmother insisted upon it with my own mother. And so the work that we're doing at Black Wildflowers Fund is an extension of work that has been done over and over again. And I do believe that if we trust Black women, we invest in them, we follow them, we believe them in every area of our society, where there is trauma, where there is loss, where there needs to be a lot of healing, we can transform it. It really is about trusting and believing in Black women and investing in them to do the work.
Thank you, Maya. Faye?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know how I can follow all this, but I will lean in and say that I think I too think it's important to take a time-based context around this, looking at past, present, and future in this, because this anti-DEI movement is nothing new. It is a pattern. It is a moment in our history, and we have to I think continue. We have to continue our journey as Black women to assert our identity in this space. There's a, and I think it's a particularly poignant year. We're looking at bookending this year, looking at, the Fearless Fund, essentially in 11th Circuit Court saying that, we cannot, give investments directly and specify them directly for Black women. And we are ending the year, I believe, somewhere where we never thought we would be, which is very likely with a Black woman as our president. And just the fact, the hope and the optimism that is coming out in this time based on a Black woman stepping into this role, I think is phenomenal. There's a book that comes to mind when I think of this. It's called Sister Citizen. It's written by Melissa Harris Perry. And it is focused on the shame stereotypes and Black women, the shame stereotypes of Black women in America. And it asserts that politics are, for us, for Black women, are not limited to traditional ideology around formal government participation. She argues that instead, the pursuit of our own recognition, our identity, and our citizenship in this country is intrinsically political by nature, just because of the role that we have played. And I think it's also important to think about us in the light of the economy and wealth creation. The wealth of this country was built on stolen land of Indigenous people and the slaves that were birthed out of our bodies as Black women. And so the wealth that this country has created has come from our loins, right? So like thinking about that in the context of our struggles and the way we have been stereotyped. But this work is not just about us individually. It is about, if we can claim our rightful place in society, that will truly say that we have been seeing, and this country understands its history and is able to provide compensatory, begin the compensatory process of making that right.
Thank you. I'm really curious because of the reparative nature of the work. It is important to focus not just on what you do, but on how you do it. Why is this focus important? And what do you want aspiring leaders to take away from this approach? I see that be really prominent for all of you. Maya?
Well, at Black Wildflowers Fund, one of the things we wanted to do, in addition to investing in Black educators and providing a variety of grant programs so that they could design the schools they wanted for their community, was this creating like a community of resistance, a safe space for them to share best practices, to learn from one another, and to step into this full state of wholeness. Because you can create beautiful learning environments for children, but if the adults in those environments are not healed and whole and free and prioritizing their health and their wellness, it falls apart, right? So that's why there's always been these little small pockets of success. And I think a big part of systemic change in education, especially, is where educators and leaders who are doing this critical work are sustained. They have, you know, abundance, both in terms of their earnings, they're able to build wealth for their families, and they're able to rest. Like, we have to redesign the way teachers are able to work and show up in the classroom, and we have to create more flexible models. And that's what we see happening in our community. So the answers are among, you know, the 60 plus educators we've already invested in. And the vision is, how do you really accelerate the growth of that movement? So we go from 60 to 200 educators over the next 3 years, and we pour in another $7 million in their visions. So for me, it's really about, like, how do you just accelerate and continue to put all of that genius, that commitment to community in rooms together, sharing and learning from one another, and then amplifying their work so that we have the proof points and we know it's possible.
Maya, can I double click on something that you just said?
Absolutely.
I'm really curious. Like, one of the experiences that I've had in multiracial, multicultural community, as well as communities of marginalized people, is we have this like utopic vision of what it's going to be like when we're all together. And then we get all together and we understand deeply the trauma that we're carrying from all the other environments that we've been in. And like, how that trauma does not just get left at the door when we're with uh, a, a group that has managed to surpass the segregation that the country enforces. And I'm really curious about what you see the demands of that for Black institutions and for multiracial, multicultural institutions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a very complex question. But one of the things that gives me kind of hope and promise is just the reality that by existing, right, and by participating in trust-based philanthropy, where we say we're a fund who's completely focused on you believing in the promise, the potential, and vision of Black educators, and that we're going to invest in all of them it, as they create all different types of schools, and in a community of practice where they can continue to grow professionally. So we provide scholarships for them to obtain their Montessori credential, which is something that in our country, where only 5% of teachers identify as Black with a Montessori credential, it doesn't make sense, right? That's an opportunity gap that we've chosen as a society not to invest in Black educators. Oftentimes, many of those educators already are working in Montessori schools, already have this kind of experience, but they never got the professional credential. I think what we just saw last week with Bloomberg putting $300 million into historically Black colleges that are medical schools. I graduated from Spelman College. I've always known that HBCUs produce excellent leaders. I've always known that in law, in medicine, in education, in science, and the data shows it too, right? So I think what we're seeing is this recognition that philanthropy is saying we have to change. We have to invest in the institutions that have done more with less, because that is exactly what HBCUs are. And we have to give big dollars. We have to bankroll endowments, right? So that this is sustained investment, not little chunks here and there. So those are the things that we're trying to model at Black Wildflowers Fund, and we're seeing some promising things happening as a result.
Faye?
Oh, Lord, this is good. I will share from our perspective, when we think about our work at Black Wall Street Forward, very specifically, there's two things that I think are important in this context. One is that we're looking at the past, present, and future, all at the same time. And really important, I think, for any work related to racial equity in this country. What we're hearing now is a move where people are saying, hey, forget about the past. We're all good. Everybody's equal. Let's just move forward. Kumbaya. And no, because if we don't understand who we are and our identity is rooted, right, in our history here, I think that we miss out on opportunity. And so in our work, training and equipping Black ecosystem builders, we want to help them understand the economic history of Blacks in America and the rationale for how we got here. If some of you may be familiar with the Sankofa bird, but in Twi, the whole idea is that this bird, the symbolism is going back to the past and bringing forward that which is useful. So looking at the original and historical Black Wall Streets in this country, what were they based on? What culture, what values and pillars were lent themselves to the creation of those amazing instant economies, right? Where we all came together to do what was needed for the Black community. Yes, it was by necessity at that point, but that doesn't mean it can't happen again under different circumstances. So what does that look like? But in order to get to that, we have to both understand where we came from. We have to understand our current economic status and what is holding the systems in place that are creating the current barriers. And that's a part of what we're also equipping our ecosystem builders to understand. And then working collaboratively with community to co-design new solutions and new systems. Because we really believe that, yes, we can sort of try and unwind and push back on anti-DEI and try and do this inclusive work. But guess what? That is long, 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 long tail. And a lot of people ain't got time for that. They need now, right? So how can we take in philanthropic investment and put it into things that are not one-off, but put it into the design of our own self-sustaining economic system so that we don't have to keep going back and begging for dollars. And that I think is extremely important. And this idea that we do this as ecosystems. We do this collectively, that no one entity, person, organization, or community can do it alone. So all of our work also has in it this root of action learning network, where folks are coming together, learning together, sense making, sharing, and taking action with what they are learning, and then coming back and sharing, the results and engaging continuous improvement of the work over time.
Thank you, Faye. Leah.
Okay. Yes, I mean, very similar to what Faye and Maya have shared. For us, our approach is very community-based, very community focused. We consider the business owners and the neighborhood members, the community members as stakeholders. They are stakeholders in what we're doing. They're stakeholders in the solutions that we're creating, and we are only catalysts to creating those solutions. They have the answers, and so bringing them to the table is the first thing, the most important thing that we do in every initiative that we have. So in creating the Amani Fund, we didn't just decide that we knew that this was something important and that would be valuable to the community. This was something where we brought the community in, we brought business owners in, we asked them what are the issues, how, because of course as Black leaders, of course we innately understand ourselves as well. But if you approach a community that you are looking to serve as though you are the savior or though you have the answer, you will never actually see that change happen that you envision, right? They have to be a part of the solution for multiple reasons. The most important being that they actually understand very intimately the issue. And if you don't bring that innate understanding to the table, you will never have a solution that really, really gets at the root, that is actually more than a band-aid, more than a temporary fix, but that really, really gets to the root and really changes from that beginning point. And so that is something that has been very intentional in our approach to every solution that we bring about, and all the work that we do. And that's something that when we work with other collaborators, when we bring others into the work that we're doing, that we make very clear that this will be our approach. We need to seek to understand first, and then with that continuous all the time input, bringing them to the table, that compassion, especially in the communities that we're working in, especially in the Black community, that understanding of that 400 plus years of trauma, that is so important and vital to the work that we're doing, because you can't apply a solution to a problem that is that big without that understanding and that compassion and that curiosity to understand what truly will solve this problem. So those are the aspects of our approach that we feel like are really important, that if any other leaders are coming into this work, that they need to take into consideration.
Yeah. Leah, I feel like I've heard that piece of logic, like incredible logic, said for like 20 years at least from Black leaders. I'm wondering if you have seen any, I think for the non-Black participants watching this, I think that oftentimes these can serve to give us some reflection. Like, are there any trends that you see for the ways in which Black brilliance and Black leadership are blocked out of the decision-making table or the sense-making table that you're talking about?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. What we've just seen happen, just recently with the pushback to DEI, you feel like you're making strides. With all of the controversy and then all of the response to the controversy with George Floyd and all of these initiatives that came out of that. Just 2 years later, we're in a situation where now we're getting pushed back, and we're being pushed back as far as we almost as far as we came, or the intent is to do that. And that, like as Faye said, it's a continuous cycle. You feel like you take steps forward, and then automatically from top level, there comes this pushback down. And so I think that just having that ability to pivot, that ability to organize, the type of work that Common Futures is doing, the type of work that all of our organizations are doing on the grassroots level and on the various different levels, to continue to pivot and to continue to just find ways around these obstacles and these blocks, because they will continue, just as we'll continue to do our work.
Mm-hmm. What investments are you seeing in the field, in the community, that really excite you? What investments do you think we need to continue to make? Faye?
Yeah, this is very important, for the work that we do at the ecosystem level. I think what we tend to see is no one has a problem, for the most part, investing directly in entrepreneurs. It's a very clear sight line to, okay, if we give a grant or a loan to an entrepreneur, we can then track that to this growth in revenue, this growth in jobs, this growth in whatever they want to measure, right? And so that investment is important. But there are two other levels that often get lost. And the second is this idea, what we call is 3 E's, right? That's the entrepreneur level. And then there's the equipper level. And these are the support or the Black-led support organizations that are doing this work every day, typically for very little money, sometimes for free, sometimes, on shoestring budget. They don't get equitably funded. They are always struggling, having to, deal with mission creep because they got to pay the bills. And so they end up doing 50 things, cannot focus on the thing, right? Constantly worried about where the next dollar is going to come from. And so that investment is crucial. We do see some organizations and governments, particularly through ARPA, thankfully, there has been some investment put into that after they saw the mess that PPP was. They both the ARPA, both rounds of ARPA, they've tried to figure out how to counteract that by investing both in entrepreneurs and in support organizations. And then lastly, what we're seeing over the past 2 or 3 years is the federal government actually getting on board with this idea of they call it ecosystem building. It's not quite there yet. But what you will see is they have made billions of dollars in investment over the past 2 years in ecosystem type approaches, recognizing that it's not enough to put money directly into the hands of entrepreneurs and not enough to fund support organizations. You also have to fund the glue and the connectivity so that all those resources flow in an equitable way. And so I'm heartened to see that some of that movement, we're now going to take a step backwards with this from a government perspective and from a private investment perspective because of the fear of lawsuits. However, what we're seeing is philanthropy actually stepping up in a lot of ways. A lot of collective groups of foundations are coming together and have said, hey, we are going to stand against this. We know they're coming after us next, and we are preparing ourselves for the fight. And they're continuing. Many of them are continuing to double down on their investment in Black entrepreneurship, and so that feels good. Now, whether or not they'll back down when when the lawsuits start coming, remains to be seen. But at least they are being intentional right now.
Thank you, Faye.
Mm-hmm.
Maya.
I think what gives me a lot of hope and promise in the field is organizations like the 1954 Project, the Cafe Group, making $1 million investments in Black-led organizations, but not just because the leaders of those organizations are Black, but also they're making an investment in proximity. And they're saying, we actually want to invest in Black leaders who are deep in the work and who they have a specific problem that they're addressing, right? And so I think about the Center for Black Education Development out of Philly, where there is a clear path of investment, which is how do we get our young people excited about being educators? How do we ensure that Black boys early in middle school and high school see themselves as educators? How do we amplify and have them own their genius, their cultural context, their ability to connect with people and see a pathway and in education that inspires them, right? Where they can go to college and not come out with debt. When we know right now that is what has happened to so many of us. The pathway to opportunity requires us to take on a significant amount of debt, much more than our white counterparts. So, those organizations who are designing solutions um, grounded in proximity is, to me, what is promising, and it inspires me. It's also what we follow at Black Wildflowers Fund. It's educators who have been doing the work, who are opening schools in their community, who understand deeply who, their why, and collaborate and work right alongside them to design their schools so they're not doing this work alone. They're all independent nonprofit schools with boards, partnering with parents. Oftentimes, parents are the educators who are designing and running the schools. So I think it's this proximity piece that is really exciting to me. And then also clearly defining that problem, and philanthropy saying, hey, we're going to invest in Black leadership, and we're going to invest in those who've clearly kind of defined a problem and an approach to solving that problem.
Thank you, Maya. Leah.
Yeah, so what I'd love to see, and what we'd love to see at Remix Ideas in terms of investing in the future, investments in the future, are projects that are very similar kind of to our 1899 project. So our 1899 project is in Pine Bluff, and in 1899, W.E.B. Du Bois did research on Black wealth and found that Pine Bluff was fourth in the nation for Black wealth. But if you look at Pine Bluff today, it's one of the fastest shrinking cities, and the poverty level is higher than the national average, but it's 76% African American in population. And so when you look at Pine Bluff, there is a ton of infrastructure. There is so much potential in Pine Bluff. And so with the 1899 project, what we've done is we've created a campaign to say, what is right, what is strong about Pine Bluff instead of what is wrong about Pine Bluff. And oftentimes we look at our communities that are experiencing problems similar to Pine Bluff: high poverty, lots of abandonment, and we continue to stay focused. We continue to stay focused on that problem. But if we could infuse those communities with capital, so we'd like to see that shift in capital to communities like Pine Bluff, and there are so many across the United States. We can, that have very similar histories to Pine Bluff, and infuse the same communities like Pine Bluff, where there's a hospital, there is an airport, there's an HBCU and a two-year college, there's farming, there's all of this infrastructure, this all of this booming enterprise that just is waiting and available to support. And so that's what we would love to see, more investments in the future. Investing in communities like that, and in that idea of thinking what's strong about our communities instead of what's wrong about our communities. What can we see as the positive, and how can we shift our capital and shift not just the mindset. The mindset is important, and not just shift how we perceive, but actually then support that with our dollars. We have another campaign that is, put your dollars where you say your heart is. So, shifting that money as well, because that is what we all know. That is what is a huge part of shifting. People can have wonderful, beautiful ideas, and they can have a beautiful intent. But if you don't have the dollars behind it, oftentimes it's just a beautiful idea. Then that we say dies in the parking lot. So that's what we want to see more of.
Thank you, Leah. I'm going to ask one more question, but I wanted to encourage the audience, if they have any questions, to put it in the comments so that we can ask it of these wonderful leaders. So my last question for you is, for our non-Black leaders in the audience, how can interracial solidarity be fostered? And what do you want them to understand about this work? Maya, if we could start with you. Deep breaths.
Yeah, I mean, even asking this question, my mind immediately went to, um, what we talked about earlier, the historical time that we're in and what it means to have Vice President Harris potentially as the nominee. And it also makes me think of, about what happened in 2016, when we had Hillary Clinton as as a presidential nominee. I mean, there is so much patriarchy in our society, and racism, and it's kind of the air we breathe. And so, what I would encourage folks to do who really want to ensure that we're able to close the opportunity gap for Black and Brown folks, that there's a belief that Black leaders do have both the experience, the proximity, um, to transform our society. It is really doing that work with your white brothers and sisters so that we can all see and unlearn the biases, um, and the patriarchy that is in our air, right? So that we can point it out, that we can educate our children, that we can tell the truth about our country and how it was built. Because if you can't start with truth and reconciliation and look back and do that work for yourself, but then encourage others that are early in their journey or just beginning their journey to do that work, then we're not going to see that change, right? So it's not just about you as an individual being on board and abandoning others that don't have that shared point of view. Like, I want my white, affluent, privileged brothers and sisters to work across the aisle, to do that work to bring others in, so that we can all operate off of really the truth, right? We can operate off of and amplify history in a way that tells the full and whole story, not just cherry picks the pieces that we feel comfortable with. That's what I'd say.
Maya, what would you say is, would you say that holds true for non-Black communities of color as well? Or is there a different ask for non-Black communities of color?
Oh, I was referring especially to white folks. And I would say, for Black and Brown folks, a lot of it is we have to heal. We have to rest. Rest is, in fact, a form of resistance. And we have to model like what it means, to do this work. And a big part of it is not kind of running yourself into the ground. A big part of it is being able to affirm, uplift, support, roll up your sleeves with others, right? All the coalition building. And then the other pieces like the ongoing healing. I literally think it's so important to invest time in yourself to be outside every day, to move your body. We started today in the accelerator with moving our bodies and breathing. Like, we literally don't breathe. And I spoke with so many of us today about, like, what are we doing in our daily lives to ensure that our wellness is paramount, is prioritized, and that we're monitoring it correctly, right? Because you can be so invested in just the work that you don't take care of yourself. You don't take care of your family. And I think a big part of it is, like, I have to take care of myself because my daughter is watching, but I also have to take care of myself if I'm going to invest in Black educators and then tell them to prioritize and take care of themselves. I can't tell them to do it if I'm not doing it myself. So I think that that's a big part of our work, doing the healing work and then prioritizing our health and our overall well-being.
Leah? Thank you, Maya.
Wow, I feel like Maya really just spoke to all of it. But I will just add that for other non-Black communities of color, it's really being as transparent and open as possible with each other. I think it's important to really understand where our communities are similar in our experiences and our trials and tribulations and challenges, and also to really be transparent and understanding about where our communities are different, and be able to approach that from um, a place of understanding and seeking to understand and seeking to learn, because we can learn things from each other. There are there are beautiful things in how each community has approached resilience, has approached perseverance, has approached healing, has approached community, and there are similarities and there are differences, and there are things that we can learn, and there are ways that we can grow collaboratively, and there are things that we can create and bloom and create something completely new and beautiful and different from that. And so I feel like that is a space that maybe we miss sometimes, because sometimes we're hustling, we're bustling, we're moving fast, and we're thinking that we already know. And so if we can come from this place of seeking to understand, I think that's really important. And I would mirror that for for our white counterparts and our our people outside of communities of color, seeking to understand, coming to the table with a humbleness of seeking to understand first. Very, very important. And if we can all approach the work that we do and seeking to make connection, true connection, because true connection is not always easy. It's not an easy thing for every human to do. That's a space of vulnerability. And so being able to give that gift of vulnerability to each other, even before we step into the work that we will do together, I think is very important and very powerful. And so that's what I would want all communities to consider.
Thank you, Leah. Faye?
Yes, yes, and what I will say is specifically what I would like, white-led philanthropic organizations, I think in particular, to keep in mind is three unique ways of funding. One is funding collectively Black organizations. Often what happens is they will put something out there. We're going to fund a Black organization to do a thing. And then what you have is like 5 different Black organizations scrambling over each other, pushing each other back, trying to jockey. And if you can fund collective Black work with multiple Black organizations, I think that could be extremely powerful. I would also say fund unrestricted. Move beyond funding programs and making organizations jump through your hoops that are often outside of what their true mission is. And then I would say, lastly, fund systems change. And so, and that starts with also thinking about the metrics and the data that you're using to track. And so often what we find is we'll apply for grants and they'll say, how many people of color are you serving? How many Black entrepreneurs are you going to reach? And how, guess what? We're not the problem. So you need to shift your metrics to say, for instance, how many white leaders are you going to give equity training to? That counts. And so fund that work. Let's fund changing the system instead of trying to, fix the people that aren't broken, right? Let's fix the broken system and fund that. So those are some things that I would say are important.
Beautiful. Thank you, Faye. I know that we have 2 questions in the comments. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we can't ask them, but I really encourage folks to connect with our panelists on LinkedIn and continue to ask the questions there. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of the vulnerability, the asks, the commitment to community that you've displayed in this hour.
It's been beautiful to be with you all. I'm sorry I could not be there in person with you all, but great to see everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.